Thank you for coming. One more clap, guys. I'm going to start with two questions that I'm going to ask at the same time because I feel like the answers are connected, but decide who wants to answer them first. So, Michael, Maclovia, and Todd, what brought you to this story and made you want to be involved in the project? And then Nicole, Maria, and Ian, how has the Space for Art film made you change, if at all, how you think about the work that the foundation is doing?
Well, I'm happy to kick it off and then maybe hand it over to Maclovia. But Nicole had mentioned like every time she was doing another spacesuit or they were traveling to Moscow or Tokyo, she kept on mentioning the work of the Space for Art Foundation. And it was interesting because at first it was just fragments, so I didn't know the whole story. But when I had like enough, not the whole puzzle, but like a big piece of the puzzle, I just said, "This is so amazing." And it's like a lot of us have spent so much time in the space community, and even people who were one degree of separation from the story. I just thought we have to tell the story. So Maclovia and Todd and I have worked on a number of documentary projects, and I pitched them on it. They all were pretty eager. They all jumped in, but Maclovia, maybe you have some thoughts.
First of all, I want to thank Michael for introducing all of us because it's just a beautiful family up here of people, and we've become very good friends. And I heard from Michael art, space, and children. And I teach elementary school, and I went to art school. And when I met Nicole, I thought she's my hero because she's just such a kind person and she creates this beautiful community wherever you go. You really do. And people are drawn to her. And I just thought it was just a poetic documentary to create. So thank you, both of you, all of you.
I've done some space stuff with Michael before. We've done some things on the ISS. And when that was brought to me, one of the cool things about being an editor is you just are pretty much dumped hundreds of hours of people talking about all kinds of different things. And then a whole nother box shows up and they dump you with hundreds of photos of everything, nothing labeled.
Stop.
And being an editor, you get to kind of see the overall picture, and it's neat for me because when it gets put together, it's like I'm like you guys getting to watch it for the first time, and get to kind of see the story unfold based on what everybody's talking about. And this was really easy to put together actually because they had a vision, they had their goals, and luckily they had a bunch of people following around with cameras to give us all that great footage, especially with the space station footage, the shuttle, and a lot of the programs when you went to the hospitals, that kind of thing. Because that's what I'm always looking for is content, right, as an editor. So it turned out fantastic. I enjoyed it.
And one other thing is that in some ways there's two stories. The thing that's the most captivating for all of us is the children. So that story grabs you and it tells you. But there was this crazy story we needed to tell, which was the formation. Because if you talk to anybody in the public and say, yes, we have space and we have children and we want to heal them, it sounds like if you wanted to challenge somebody to say, why don't you go do something like this? Nobody wouldn't even know where to start. So I think people needed to hear how this unlikely, band of brothers got together and said, how do we even do this? And I think that's part of the story. But I think at the end, it's really all about the children.
It's really wonderful to see all of you out in the audience. I didn't know if it would just be us in here. I had no idea. So thanks for showing up. I think for me, like the film, the idea of like what the film means for me to watch it and think about it, storytelling is so important. And I think in our lives, the story we tell ourselves about what we're capable of, what's possible, how creative we can be, is really our only limitation in life. And I think in hanging out with astronauts and people who do something as insane as build rockets and go to space, they have maintained a kind of childlike belief in their ability to do something outlandish and impossible and impractical and dangerous and thrilling and out of this world, literally. And so children have always been a big inspiration for me because they also think like that. They haven't been jaded by all of the times throughout our lives where we're told, like, that's a crazy idea, you can't do something. And artists, I always like being around artists, and I think one of the reasons why I'm an artist too is because I also didn't listen to those people telling me I couldn't do stuff. And I didn't subscribe to those notions of, oh, that's impossible or that's ridiculous, or I just kept believing in the magic. And so when I met Nicole at NASA, I was like, oh, here's a fellow lunatic, somebody else who is willing to believe in the magic and who hasn't had that stamped out. And when we spend time with kids, we're among our people. We are around those people who have that wisdom of believing in magic and impossible things. And when we were in the hospitals, and it's really beautiful to see the film for me because, as a person who's also interested in health and healing and the mind's ability to heal and the mind's ability to make us, we have great capacities. And it's hard to interrupt that moment while you're working with kids to be like, okay, let me take your cortisol levels to show this clinically. Let me stop and do a blood draw to prove that this works. I never wanted to do that because that interrupts the whole thing that's actually working to create a medical proof of concept. But film is pretty non-intrusive. So you can actually see when a kid's posture changes, their demeanor changes, their abilities to feel the good in life are filling their sails. And film is a great gift that we have to the medical community, to people in general, to see, oh, this stuff works. These very simple things actually work. Just bearing witness is important. So thank you.
Very nice. Thank you, Ian. Thank you, Michael, for allowing this to happen. And for me, to be able to watch our story on film has been a complete dream. Because throughout all these years of creating this artwork, our belief has always been to elevate the kids' artwork and make it into something extraordinary. And to have the kids be part of this experience is something meaningful to me. And it just wants to make me, and it's the fuel that, I want to continue. And art is a definite, powerful element in here. And it's a tool that, changes lives. So I am so happy that all of you came and you got to experience this, and even some little kids who have participated in our art projects. This is all for you, and we will definitely continue and do more work.
And thanks all of you guys, because I think gratitude is the word that comes to mind when I watch the film, when I think about the whole experience of what went into creating it, the work with the kids, standing around the table with patterns and, talking to Gary at ILC Dover about how to bring these things to life and all of that. I mean, there's a gratefulness in all of that, every level of it. And so I want to start out by thanking two other people who are in this room who are active participants in this whole project as well. And I'm just going to point them out, and they'll be upset with me because I'm doing it. But we've got Margaret McCarthy here, who partners in life and everything else with Michael, who saw the beauty in this, and I think the story in this right there. And very grateful, Margaret. And this is a woman who, my entire time of knowing her, there's a level of thoughtfulness that is just, it's always present when you're with her. And she gifts it to us. So thank you, Margaret. Sitting next to her is this guy that I hang out with every now and then, my husband, Chris, who I I probably shouldn't say it this way, but he and Michael have the most wonderful bromance I have ever witnessed. I really think they talk more on the phone than we do. But again, helping with the production of this film and other projects that these guys have worked on together, just really wanting to bring beauty and inspiration and, the magic, like you described it, Ian, too, of belief and really cool things that seem impossible coming to life. And so, very grateful for that. Um, this film, and I'll stop rambling in a second. I look at everyone on this stage, and there's some little piece that has come together as part of this. The evolution of how, I have vivid memory of us in Houston doing the filming. We were Space Center Houston led us on to this moonscape that they have with the Beyond spacesuit, and we're pointing at stuff that may never have shown up in there, but there's like this heart in it that is behind all of it as well. And, Lolly, how much I love you, Michael. Maclovia, putting that together was huge. Um, Todd, thank you for coming in when we were at those final stages of, the editing, the tweakage that I think brings the story. It was, it is
tweakage.
technical tweakage story term, but I think all of it was necessary to really bring it to the screen this way. And Ian, thanks for the way you described all this. And I just have to point out, gifted to Ian was that really extraordinary jacket that he's wearing by two people in the audience. That Jamie and Eric, who have been doing some projects with us as well. I will encourage you to check that out. The Water musical, very, very fun stuff going on just north of the border here. But they gifted this jacket to Ian, and it's got like the Peter Pan story on it, on the jacket. And when I think about, honestly, even before we traveled you'll see in the film, we traveled to all these different countries to create artwork with kids. And we spent some time in London at Great Ormond Street Hospital, where like Peter Pan, the author of Peter Pan, the family, they're great benefactors to the Great Ormond Street Hospital. And I remember Ian seeing the Peter Pan statue when we were there and being all excited about that. And we got this, this book that was a gift. And it's like these full circle kinds of things that come around. Like, who knew that Ian would end up with this really cool jacket today that I think expresses not just, that belief that you were talking about, Ian, but really what underlies the story in this film as well.
So, Nicole, you mentioned in the film, you talk about the young girl who made the connection between her stay in the hospital and your time in space and, all the difficulties that can come along with that. Were there any other, for you or for any of you, any other, like, holy cow, I never even thought about that moment, either while making the film or with working with some of these kids? And not even going to finish the question. Maclovia is ready to answer.
Well, Ian, you had some wonderful stories about some of the children you worked with. The girl with the white horse, and she would paint the horse, and the young girl who loved elephants, who painted. You got the elephants to come to see her, connected her with the elephants, and they painted the elephants. And I thought that was some wonderful. There are all kinds of stories, but the beauty in it is just unbelievable. So that really touched me.
All right, I'll take another time to speak. I think the most significant thing I witnessed was, we are really stronger together, and the artwork that I liked to do, and I often like to do, is artwork that's made by a lot of hands, and by a lot of hands building something really big and surprising, not just making something and putting it up on your wall by yourself, but making something and adding it to something else that somebody else builds, and then collecting that over time. And doing that in the setting of the hospital What really moved me about that process was like you'd set up an art table and people would come around and start working, and kids would be talking to each other, parents would be back talking to each other, and it was the wisdom gained that they weren't going to get from their doctors. It was like a mom telling another mom what's working, and it was kids doing something together where they kind of forgot the context, like they became artists instead of patients. And I think that shift in identity and that shift in experience and that shift in vibe, it's a lot easier to get that when you're with somebody else. And the reason I believe that is because you're not doing it for yourself. Like every kid that participated in that experience, in a way, they were like boosting up their levels to be like right there next to somebody else. It was like they were rising to help the person next to them rise. And it was not like a spoken said thing. It wasn't like conscious, like a kid's like thinking to themselves, like, I'm gonna be a little stronger right now so that I can participate in this, so that this thing can go up into space and brighten somebody else's day. It wasn't like a conscious chain of thoughts like that, but that's happening. And I think that the more we recognize that as people, the more we like use our own inner resources, knowing we're like sitting right next to somebody else who's struggling with their own thing. Doesn't matter if you're in a hospital room or in a cafe, like you're sitting next to somebody who's struggling with their own thing. And so we can be better together. We can be stronger, we can be more healthy, we can be more alive, and we can have more fun. And I watched that in contexts that were extremely difficult with little people doing it. So I know that it's possible for me in just like a normal day to just be like better. So I think that's important to recognize. And when you see it, you see kids doing that, you're like, oh, if they can do it, certainly we should be able to do it. And so that's what I think a lot about from this experience. Yeah.
Yeah. I like to remember the personal connections that I got to experience with these little kids. And especially doing this space themed artwork and what happens when they participate in these events. So I was with a little boy and we were doing a project called Earthrise. And we were showing them the pictures, of the moon and the earth. And this little boy was trying to copy this image, but, I noticed that he didn't understand what he was looking at. So then I said, do you know what this picture is? And he said, yeah, this is Earth, and that's the moon. But he was pointing at the moon that was Earth. He had it backwards, right? So then I said, no, this is the view from the moon looking at Earth. And I said, that's your home. And in that moment, this little boy looked at me and he said, he went, he had a little moment and he said, that's home. And I said, yeah, that's where we live. So then he took an eraser and he erased the whole thing. And he started doing the right drawing. And then at that moment, he realized his own place in the universe. And I thought that was completely magical because then we looked at each other and we're like, yeah, that's home. This blue planet is our home. So then he went and he hugged Nicole. And
Bonus. Of course.
so, yeah, those are the most, those little moments are really what, the moment that you see a change in perspective and how they think. And yeah, and they forget what they're at. They forget about the worst moment that they're going through. And I feel that for a moment they feel healthy. Yeah, so that's my experience.
And I think it carries forward beyond that as well. And you asked like this connection between like the little girl story that I honestly Ian told me even before that happened. I'm like, before that happened, that was the kind of thing I was going to experience in one way or another. But I didn't expect it to be so in my face, right? So like absolutely, being an astronaut in space, like being here, in the hospital. But I think it's funny, we think about astronauts floating around in a spaceship, looking out at Earth, or getting to float around in a spaceship, to move in 3 dimensions that way, and to continuously be in awe of that while you're in that place, and to look out the window and have that same exact feeling that that child did, recognizing, oh man, there's a planet that I live on, and I'm in space, as part of this universe. And we're feeling that all the time in space when we're there. And I'm going to give a shout out to a couple other people are here that I don't know that they would want me to do that either, but I'm going to, because they're extraordinary human beings. And they have also been with us, along the way on this journey with Space for Art in one way or another. I mean, they have been there with us either physically at projects or are doing things out there in the world that are complementary in one way or another to what Space for Art is doing. So there's 3 more astronauts here today. We got Wendy Lawrence, who is a local. Raise your hand, Wendy, because you're awesome. We got Soyeon Yi, who another local. You're rocking it here. Where Chris Zembrowski is, where are you, dude? All the way in the back, right there, local. So, so these are humans who have flown in space, who have experienced this kind of thing. And I think through the spaceship window or the way it feels there, some of that same kind of just extraordinary inspiration that I get the sense of the people in these projects participating in feeling as well when we're doing it. And it makes me happy to think about how, how we can think about kids in a hospital or in a place like a refugee center or somewhere being able to lift themselves out of that place and feel kind of the same way as you do when you're in space looking out the window at our planet. It's pretty cool.
I guess I just want to add one thing too. I didn't realize that spacesuits, like who makes spacesuits? I never knew how that worked. And those are the kind of things technically that are you got to bring those up too, because I was like,
Come back this summer. We make spacesuits here.
yeah, who makes spacesuits? And I also learned that the shuttle doesn't have an engine. It actually just coasts and glides down. So I made a mistake of putting like engine noises on the shuttle as it was coming down. I passed her over the thing. She was like, "No, there's no engine there."
What did those noises sound like?
It was a 747 is what I put on.
Hey guys, we have one of those.
Real big and boomy and everything. She's like, "No, it doesn't do that." so I got to learn a lot about the space program too. Which is
Ian said something really beautiful about the children, just about how they have this, their own self-contained world. They have the wonderment and this idealism that sadly we lose as we get older. And they just reminded me that sometimes they do this competition between young kids and professional architects, and they do marshmallows and toothpicks, and they try to see who can build the tallest structure. And all the time, the kids beat the architects because the architects overthink it, and the kids are just intuitive and they take risks because the kids don't care. And I think that's sort of the beauty of giving these kids this blank palette and just let them express themselves. And I think also in a medical setting, there's a lot of things that the adults try to make very scientific about medicine. And I think with the kids, it's just allowing them to escape, allowing them to be creative, allowing them to ignore some of the stuff that the doctors think might sound logical, but the kids don't really need to absorb that. They just need to try to hang on to the Peter Pan thing.
Well, I love that, Michael, because, okay, so we have a large group here of families from Seattle Children's, and we have Tanisha right there in the front row. Raise your hand up there, Tanisha. And I think some of the children here actually have created artwork that are on those 2 spacesuits that are out in the lobby that were in the film today. But oh my gosh, I look at you guys. We were over at the hospital this morning creating postcards for the Blue Origin, the Club for the Future Postcards to Space project. And hopefully, if you haven't done it already here today, they're out at the table. They have been such wonderful supporters of us as well. But I love how we were in the hospital today, and it just felt like, people were coming in. There was a family that came in. It's Saturday, didn't have to be there, but knew that this was something they might want to participate in. We had a great conversation with them. I think that was Emerson, was the young boy that we were talking to there, and how Club just supported us there. And you, exactly what you say, what all of you have said, Michael, just right then, this idea of like letting ourselves use our whole brain for as long as we possibly can, letting all of our talents come to bear, letting that creative and that technical side come together, and just seeing the beautiful things that can come from that. And we are very grateful to all at Seattle Children's for welcoming us there today, and very happy to have all of you here with us to see the film and to see the results of your creativity out there in the lobby.
You're just calling everybody out today, and I love it. I do like to call people out. It's because I have to talk in front of them.
There's a lot of them.
There are a lot of you. Which is why I'm going to keep my last couple questions. So I imagine you all have questions too. This might be like having to choose between favorite children, but I'm going to ask it anyway. Is there a favorite spacesuit? Does everybody have a favorite spacesuit?
No comment.
They're all beautiful.
Keeping in mind that some of the kids that did them are here.
Last one with
One
all
you guys
your
worked on
artwork
together.
is so awesome.
Yeah. Or are there plans for more spacesuits?
I think there's always plans for more spacesuits, and then things like we claim Postcards to Space as a project before Blue Origin ever did. I don't know. Is Lucas in here? He might smack me, but we'd like to think they got the idea from us. But that's the thing I love too. Is sadly with the spacesuits, we can never promise that they'll go to space. We've been really, really fortunate to get a couple of the suits up to the space station, something called excess cargo, discretionary cargo, something like that. You can pack it really small and get it into and very fortunate for that to happen. We are crossing all appendages that one of those two suits out there, it would probably be the Infinity suit, might make it to space, but we never know. So when we can do things like Postcards to Space with Blue and Club for the Future, or we can do things like you saw that kind of mosaic that came together with all the kids' artwork. People that will partner with us from groups like A Block, Interactive Experiences, that do these, like when you go to a museum and you walk by the wall and the trees move when you move, they do these really ginormous format things. And they're like, we can do stuff with your kids' art that then we can send those electronic pieces of artwork to the space station. We can write songs and send them to the space station. We can then have the astronauts on the space station watch that video or listen to that music and experience the children's artwork that way when we might not be able to physically send something to space. So we're really, really grateful that we have those pathways as well. And I hope to continue doing that. And yes, I hope we build more spacesuits. When we finished the very first suit, and we just stood there kind of stunned by it, right? The Hope suit, where each of those individual pieces, those paintings, these original paintings on canvas were brought together into this spacesuit. And we just looked there like every single one of those paintings has an important and extraordinary story behind it. We might not ever know what it is. We might not ever know who that family was or who those kids were that did it, but every single one of them has this amazing story behind it. And we'd love to be able, I think, to dig a little bit deeper into that kind of storytelling and the impact that you guys have been discussing. And we have our friends at Seattle Children's who are also very interested in how do we, sadly the word I don't think is like quantify. How do we better understand the power of all this without Ian doing a cortisol test or doing anything? How do we just let the experience happen and understand really what is coming from it? And so I think there's a lot that we can do.
All right, I have one more question, and I'm going to hand it over to all of our audience. There's so many of them we have. For everybody except Nicole, would you go to space?
I probably would. I would. I don't know if I'd stay there, but I would. It would be interesting to, definitely a beautiful experience. I think that most people would want to try, but
Are you like my mom where you want to go, but you don't want to have to go on the rocket up or down?
Yeah.
You want to just be
Yeah,
there?
just
Here
you
you
have
me
to
up like
eat
some
worms
way and-
during survival
Yeah.
training. So
I don't
100%.
want to get motion sickness.
100% for me. And I would just like to do a plug also because I think that, you know, in the original NASA charter, if I'm not mistaken, they said that space is a place for poets and dreamers. And so I really want to do an artist residency program in space for myself and for other artists. I think that it's really important because
No selfish motivation there.
look, I'll send 100 artists before I go if that's the deal. You know, no problem. But I do want to go too. But I really do think, and for you young people out there who are still young, the space program, there's so much potential. We're entering into a golden age, a new age of exploration. And so I think there's actually a chance that like more of us in this room are going to have a chance to go to space than ever before. And that's really exciting. And it's really exciting to think about all the different ways we can be in space. When you think about living in space, you think about gardens in space, you think about what you're doing out there, that's also broadening. Like the idea of what we're doing in space is getting grander, and that's only limited by our own imagination. So I am advocating, yes, for myself to go to space, but there's a lot of younger people in here who probably have a better chance than me. And so keep your eyes on the prize and see if you can get out there. That's what I would say.
I will go now. You convince me.
no, I'm with you. I wouldn't either.
I'm ready to go whenever everybody else is ready. But it truly is. This moment right now is a once in a generational opportunity. And you know, for a long time, you know, space was kind of stalled out. We had a number of accidents. It was very, very difficult. But this is truly a golden age, and really over the next few years, it will be accessible for probably initially upper middle class, but eventually it's going to be a lot more accessible for everyone. And I think that's part of opening up space for all of humanity.
I'm still deciding whether or not.
You have to
Thinking it
strap
through.
yourself to a rocket.
Just thinking like video games are good. I mean, I could just pretend like I'm up there and I don't have to worry about it or anything.
All right. Well, while you decide,
Still working that. I'm working through it. Yeah.
You know, while you're adjusting the mic there, I think it's kind of neat to. I mean, think about Blue Origin just up the street from here, where go to the website. What is the tagline? For the benefit of Earth, right? And the vision of millions of people living not just on the planet, but off of it, all for the benefit of Earth. And the baby steps that are being taken right now to make that possible, it's really, really impressive to think about it. And it's happening right here. And there's so much more to come. And I would go to space with any of you, by the way. Yeah. And you, even though you don't want to go.
I'm afraid of flying. Don't tell
Snore.
my boss.
That'd be-
Afraid of heights.
Absolutely terrified of airplanes. I know. I work in the best place for that, don't I?
Where are we going? Oh, I'm sorry.
How many art pieces have you done in total for like each of the suits, and like how many art pieces do you think have been done?
Yeah, it's about, I think across all of the suits, it's like about 4,000 pieces. That's what you said, Maria? I think so. Yeah. And Ian, how many were on the first suit, like on Hope, just Hope itself? I want to say like 800. Was it like 800?
Probably 800 or between 800 and 1,000 or something. And it's a great question. I wish I could have a solid answer, but they sound about right to me. It's about 4,000 on the suits, maybe 1,000 or 800 on each one or something like that.
And you should go look, if you go to our website, to the spaceforartfoundation.org website, there's this interactive experience you can do with one of the suits that's out there with the Beyond Art Space suit. We had a 3D model made, and you can go on and you can like spin the model of the suit around, and you can click on the little dots on the suit, and it'll tell you where, like where it was from, somewhere in Africa or somewhere in South America, or in what organization participated with it. So it's kind of cool to go and just search out and, zoom in and find a picture or a painting that you like, and then go see where in the world it's from.
I think every country on Earth has submitted artwork. What is
That is
that?
true.
192
192
countries on Earth.
nation states, yes.
So like 192 countries, people have made art, including Antarctica. We had one from
We had a painting from
somebody made it while they were stationed in Antarctica.
There were no kids there, sadly.
It was
but
an
they-
adult,
an
so
adult
not as
who
good,
thinks
but
she's
it was
okay.
still pretty good. She did a good job. Yeah, yeah.
It was very cool.
And we need more.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And for being our brave first question asker. Asker. That's a word.
Yeah.
Like, we've got Home Beyond Earth posters for
Yeah.
those brave enough to walk up to the mic and ask their questions.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Congratulations.
Such a beautiful story, so forgive me for focusing on the cold engineering question. But with thousands of art pieces coming in, who had the thankless task, and what was the procedure for ensuring that all of these paints would meet NASA's material compatibility spec for the International Space Station, and this project wasn't going to get sunk in an environmental review 2 years down the road? Who had the challenge of making that work?
Well, I love your question. And here's why, because I was like in the beginning stages of putting together the first suit with my friend Gordon Andrews from NASA. And I was the one that was like, can we fly this thing? And he was like, oh, definitely not. And but I kept bugging him about it. And finally one day he goes, okay, look, we're going to take the suit down to this guy. They call him the Nose. And I was like, okay, so there's a guy at NASA who they call the Nose because he's got such an acute sense of smell. I don't know if he was a sommelier or something in a previous life, but he can smell things really. So you had to pass this dude's test in addition to submitting the paints for testing. So we had to submit the tests. We had to submit the tests for the paints we were using for testing to get approval. And then we had to pass the smell test by a real human who was like trained to smell stuff that was going up onto the International Space Station. Because as you know, maybe you don't know, the International Space Station is a very contained environment. So if something stinks on the International Space Station, Nick, it stinks for a long time, right? I mean, it's like, doesn't go away. Is that accurate?
It is. That's why I think we're not allowed to have some kinds of fish and bananas on the space station.
Blue cheese, you can't.
Yeah, blue cheese. Yeah, there's things, But it's a totally, I mean, it's a legit question, right? Because we got to keep the air clean, and the systems that we use can only clean certain things out of the air. And so you got to, it's like the off gassing, maybe that's where the Nose comes in. I don't know if he smells anything that has kind of a toxic scent to it. And, but we found the paints that were allowed. Thankfully, the ones you'd already used were good. And so for all the projects we've done since then, we continue to buy those same paints with the hope that we'll be able to get more suits onto the space.
And it's similar working in a hospital environment too. It's you want to have stuff that's non-toxic and easy to work with, and that's kid friendly and stuff. So it was fortunate we didn't have to really make.
The astronauts might chew on it or something.
Yeah, we didn't have to make any modifications to our game plan too much to accommodate. But thank you. That's a cool question. Okay.
Okay, Nicole, I got to ask a follow-on. Having done crew equipment and approval of what goes to space, did you have any pushback from NASA Safety on your watercolors?
I did not, because Mary Jane Anderson, our dear friend Mary Jane Anderson, so when I was going to fly the watercolors, it was the same thing. I had to bring the little kit that I was taught, and thankfully watercolors, like you could find some acrylic paints that, like what we used on the suit, that would pass the approval process. But to paint with acrylics would be really messy in space. And you'd never be allowed, at this point at least, to have oil paints on board. But it was really pretty straightforward. I got lucky. Whatever I picked, I tried to pay attention to what was in it. No alcohol allowed and all that, because it just can't get cleaned out of the air. And she worked her magic, however, but I don't think there was any problem with it. Yeah, thankfully.
I know the answer to this, but I'm going to ask because I love the answer. Where are your watercolors?
Where are my so the paints themselves?
Where's the palette you brought with you?
Yeah. So I, being the giving, thoughtful person that I am, I thought, oh, I'll leave my watercolor kit and I'll leave the pad of paper on the space station in case anybody else wanted to paint when they got to space. And I left it a particular place. I think Wendy, I think I even told Mission Control, hey, I'm leaving this here. But a lot happens on the station with, packing things, unpacking things, moving stuff around. And so my guess is it got moved around at some point, and no one that I have tasked the mission with so far. And Sunny now currently has the mission, should she choose to accept it, to find that watercolor kit before she comes home. And I'm hopeful that she will, but who knows?
But also, Nicole, when you paint with watercolors, the water is a bubble, right? You dip your paintbrush in the bubble.
Yeah,
I mean,
it is.
It's a great story. Yeah.
Well, and I think what's cool about it, and I wish I would have, I always say this activated my brain cell to have videotaped the whole process, because I think it would be a really cool way to just portray what it's like just to live in a floating place, like where everything floats. You don't have a cup of water to dip your brush into, you're dripping it into floating balls of water, and there's these surface tension things, and this what seemed like this mysterious attractive force between things that goes on, that painting really presented to me in a way I had never seen before. I was feeling it with my own body. I was having to keep track of stuff, but that whole process of painting with these floating balls of water I think it could have been a really cool way to show just what it was like to be in space. And not more difficult, just different. That's what's fun too. I love hearing from my colleagues, my friends who've been in space too, where I think you go there the first time, you think, oh, everything's going to be more challenging. It's just going to be so much harder to do these. And it's just different. You just have to figure out how to move in 3 dimensions.
I think we have a question from a fellow astronaut.
Commander.
What was it like going to space for the first time?
It was super cool. It was, you're a little anxious, I think. I didn't feel afraid, and my friends can tell me, I think we train so much, you don't necessarily feel afraid, you just feel really anxious for wanting to know what it's going to feel like, all that energy that's going to get you off the planet. You're thinking about your family who's watching you do this, and you just really want to get to space. And really grateful for that experience. And I tell you, the second time I did it, I went out there thinking, oh, I've been there, done this. But you feel the same way. There's this energy and this excitement that it just rebuilds the same way. So I highly recommend it, by the way. And if you go, call me. Take me with you. I'll save my jacket and we can go together.
Okay, so what was the hardest astronaut piece to create, either with the most amount of creations or what took the longest time?
As far as the art spacesuits go?
Yeah.
I will, and we'll go to Ian for this one again too. Let's just say triangles and unity. So this suit over here on the right in the screen. And why was that, Ian?
Yeah, well, this one, so this guy on this side wearing the sunglasses here, his name's Gordon Andrews, and he works for the Office of Communications for the International Space Station. Great dude. None of this would happen without him. And so I was in Gordo's car one day, and he was the one that said, you guys really need to make one with all the partner space agencies around the world. And I said, Gordo, the only way that's going to happen is if Nick and I travel around the world and go to the hospitals with other astronauts and make art in all those hospitals and then bring all the artwork back. That's the only way we can do it. He goes, yeah, so just do that. He said that, no problem. And then I was like, okay. I mean, he told me to do it, so I'm going to do it. And so Nick and I talked to Nick, and she was game, and she called all her astronaut friends. First of all, it's great to know an astronaut. I'm going to tell you what, because they'll call other astronauts. And they are like a network of superheroes. They're like the Avengers, man. And they just show up. We'd go to a hospital in Germany and the astronauts would show up. We'd go to a hospital in Tokyo, Japan, astronauts would show up. This was so dope for me as a non-astronaut. But it was, we had to go around the world and we had to coordinate with all the hospitals and get doctors on board and get kids to show up, get their art programs. Some of the hospitals had art programs, some of them didn't. Some of them started art programs because of this effort. So that was like kind of the most difficult in a sense, but also it was a great experience because of that. So that's a nice question. Thank you.
That is a wonderful question. And I'm going to follow on to it in that Gary, the guy who sews the suits together, as far as the physical creation of the suit, I think would say no more little triangles and
Yeah.
hexagons for astronaut suit patterns.
He was like, "Bro, why did you pick this pattern?" He was not pleased, but he was a sport about it and did it.
Thank you so much.
How long does it take on average to make a suit?
Depends. Depends because it's the collection of the artwork first. It's the call to artists, and the artists have to answer. They have to send us the work, and that takes a couple of months to find participants. So
Or years.
for years.
I mean, think about it. We built beyond the spacesuit that's out there, the kind of white, the one that has more white color to it. That one, we started collecting artwork for that at the end of 2019.
Yeah.
And we rolled in, and we were building that suit as like the ambassador for Spaceship Earth. We knew we wanted to collect artwork from all around the world, and we knew that we wouldn't be able to physically be there for all of those art sessions either. But that network, it's like the people. You just use the people to reach out.
So important. Connections are so important, and people's willingness to help us, because we were talking to strangers and we would have to explain we're doing a spacesuit, and that was like talking in a foreign language.
But it was so cool because people just rallied, and it didn't matter. We could call our astronaut friends in a place. We could call our hospital connections. We could call our friends and just say, "Hey, do you know somebody in I don't know. I'm trying to think of some
Mozambique
country I
or-
didn't know before, and Mozambique, like." To discover that you have friends who do work in Mozambique. So Ellen Baker, our friend Ellen Baker, she goes on these mission and these health trips to Mozambique. So boom, connection with the refugee center there. But that took a long time to collect because we rolled into the plague. Remember, we rolled into the whole COVID thing. And it became one of these things that kind of crossed that whole time frame of
Right.
collecting art.
And
We
we had an
knew we weren't going to
Excel-
have the original, right?
Yeah, we had an Excel sheet with all of the countries, and we would mark it off, and then
For the guys to actually
Donna.
assemble them and sew them together, they were really talented, and there's a really strong team making them, and that went pretty quick, like less than 2 months, 3
Yeah.
months for them to like take all the artwork and put it together once we had the artwork. That was pretty fun to watch how it's like they were really great working on it.
And that's probably the longest part is the collection of
Collection.
it in one way or another, either physically getting there to be able to paint with people or collecting it. And then for that suit out there, we weren't able to collect the original artwork. We had to print it to the fabric. That was the first time we'd done that. And Ian just did this like electronic magic of laying it all out on the pattern pieces. And, in some ways that was easier. In other ways, I'm guessing it probably wasn't.
Good question. Thank you.
Thank you.
We have another Ash.
I'm Jana.
Hi.
I want to be an astronaut when I grow up. How can I be an astronaut when I grow up?
Great question.
Oh my gosh. First step, baby, right? What you just said right there is that you want to be an astronaut when you grow up. And I think just keep that spirit with you, please. And pay attention. I don't know what kinds of things you like doing, what kind of science or math or whatever that you like, or what kind of art and music, but please pay attention to all that stuff and keep it all with you. And when you figure out what you want to study at school, it should be based on those things and the kind of jobs you have that could lead to you being an astronaut. And there's going to be, as you get older, there's going to be so many more opportunities for being an astronaut in different ways that I cannot wait to see when you finally get to space. I'm going to say it again. Call me. Take us with you.
How do you choose a name for each suit?
Aw. That is such a great question. And we tried to describe it a little bit in the film, but I think all of the names in one way or another reflect something that's going on with the kids, something that, just what's in them and, what we can imagine is a positive thing to come from being part of these spacesuits. So think about all the words that are the names, like hope, unity, courage, inspiration. That's not one yet, but we're thinking about it.
Yeah.
Infinity, we just did one that was based on this idea of time and our place in the universe, those kinds of things. Yeah. I don't know if that describes it very well or not.
But
I want to be an astronaut when I grow up.
All right, you go, girl.
I'm just wondering, as her mom, what did you major in, or how can I support her in her goal?
Good question.
Well, she seems very, very sure, which is a good thing. The things you're doing right. I mean, to bring her here today, that's huge. I think to come to places like this and and just expose her to experiences and things that might not even be space related, just kind of open up her heart and mind to stuff that's out there. I studied aeronautical engineering, but there's so many things and I studied aeronautical engineering because I wanted to know how things fly. That was it. Oh, I like flying things. Maybe, I like flying things. And
I feel judged.
And when I was doing that, I was like, man, and that was when the shuttle program was getting going. I'm like, man, if you want to know how airplanes fly, why would you not want to know how rocket ships fly? And it's just kind of that interest, that curiosity kind of led this really cool, cool pathway. And I think if I were to talk to my, my friends who have flown in space here in the audience, something like that happened for them too. They just really, I love this thing. I want to know more about it. And it opened up Astronaut as a possibility from doing that. Thank you.
Why did you want to be a artist?
Oh,
why? Well, ever since I remember, I wanted to be an artist. And my parents always supported me. And the earliest memory I have is painting my rocks. We would go on a river with my father, and I would pick up rocks and paint them. And they realized that that was my thing. So they pursue, they just supported me. And I continued studying art, and art has changed my life, and it has taken me to amazing places and being able to work with incredible people like these people on stage with me. So that's why. Yeah, it's the support that you get from the family. So if you see that, support her. Yeah.
thank you.
And you know what I'm going to tell you? Pretty much, and I think we could probably include the people here. I might not know exactly what it is they do, but in my experience, almost every astronaut I've met has some kind of artistic, creative thing going on. And I include things like, rebuilding car engines or, houses or, everything in the traditional arts as well. There are musicians, there's creativity in all of these people. And I think that has to do with the fact that being creative that way, not just technically, but in other ways, really allows us to come up with the best solutions to the most challenging problems. And again, to bring your whole brain to, to that problem. And one of the things that we learn when we work in the space program, and I remember this from very early on, Jay Honeycutt, Wendy, I think you know Jay, and this man told us when we were starting out as engineers, he's like, the way we get to the moon and the way we fly space shuttles and the way we're able to build space stations is because we all believe there is a solution to the problem. And we go in with that mindset to trying to solve it. And we operate with the approach of here's how we can, not why we can't. And it's amazing what you can get done. And I would argue the same thing is true when you're trying to build an art spacesuit. You got to believe you can put all of that stuff together and that someone will support you getting that suit to space or sharing it here in the incredible lobby of this really amazing museum. So
applies to
Yeah.
post-production as well.
Exactly.
If I can add one little thing to the artist's idea, was, so, like, I have a friend of mine who's an amazing musician, world-class guy. And he told me one time, we were talking, he said, every single person on the planet has 500 talents. And I was like, that's a cool idea. 500 talents. And he said, yeah, it's just our job to figure out what they are. And I really like that idea. And I think about the arts, like, I know that for me, making art feels good. It's like going to the gym, like, you show up, you do it, and it feels good. Like, even when you don't want to do it, like, if you don't want to do it, but then you show up and you do it, you're like, oh, that actually feels pretty good. So I think one of the mistaken notions about the arts is that somehow it belongs to people who are, like, professionally employed as artists, but it's really not that way. It's like, if you have a pencil, sit down and spend a few minutes drawing. If you want to pick up some clay, or you want to pick up some crayons, or you want to pick up some watercolors, don't let anything stop you. Don't let anybody tell you that you're not an artist. Like, the only difference between people who are artists and people who are not artists is making art. That's it. So just make art and you'll be an artist. That's it.
We're part of the MCP kind of group,
Yeah.
and so we made an art contribute to one of the suits, and so we have a question about space. I have no idea. Fine. Here, if you could compare saying or admit that Earth is more magical than space, would you admit it?
Oh, great question.
Wow.
That is such a question.
I mean, we made speechless.
Will we admit that Earth is more magical than space? Is that the question?
Yes.
That's a really creative question. Nick, what do you think?
But the first thing I'd like to just say is that Earth is in space. So
That's
all pretty
cheating.
magical, right? And I mean, the only thing I can say is that, and I don't think you need to go up in a spaceship to see this either. I mean, you can go outside and look around right now and see the awesomeness and wonderfulness that surrounds us every day. We just have to open ourselves up to, and I think start by thinking about, oh my gosh, right now we're all standing on a planet, right? Sitting on a planet, spinning at 1,000 miles an hour, traveling around the sun. What is it? How far? I can never remember how many millions of miles, I don't know, thousands of miles. How fast? 33 million miles an hour? Yeah. Okay. Dude.
No poster.
We're going
for you.
super
All these
fast around the
maniacs
sun.
in this room.
But it's kind of cool to think about that. Like, to wake up in the morning, let your feet hit the ground and think, oh my gosh, I am standing on a planet in space that was designed to take perfect. I mean, we build our spaceships to try to mimic what Earth does for us naturally, right? And I think about it. Waking up in the morning on a space station, one of the first things you do is check how much carbon dioxide's in your atmosphere, right? How much clean drinking water you have. Talk to the ground about making sure that metal hull that's surrounding you is in good shape for you to, before you can do any science or work or anything, you've got to make sure that you can survive in that place. And this place does it for us naturally. And so that's why we always try to share this message of behaving like a crewmate and not a passenger. Because those are the same kinds of things we should be doing when we wake up every morning on our planetary spaceship. And, we've been doing things very peacefully and successfully with lots of countries on that machine in space. We absolutely have it in us to do it on our planetary version of our spaceship as well. It's beautiful.
I made a suit, drawing about on the suit, and on the suit of the astronaut and video.
Ah.
Thank you. That's
You
so
find it?
awesome.
What your job was?
Oh, everything.
Good
I think
question.
these guys will tell you that too. So right now, we don't have a lot of spaceships going to the space station. We rotate people on the cruise and all of that, but we're not at the point yet, and we're really looking forward to this happening sometime soon, hopefully. We're not at the point where we can just send the doctor to be on the space station, or we can't send the electrician to be on the space station. So we get to, it's really cool. I mean, I think it's one of the best parts of the job right now is that you get to trained in doing all of these kinds of things. So in addition to doing the science on behalf of the scientists down on Earth, we're maintaining the space station, we're doing outreach stuff like this, and one day you could be doing a spacewalk, the next day you could be fixing the potty. So, and it's all required. And you add, it's kind of like the fortune cookie where you add, you guys might add other things. I always add in space to the end of it because then it makes it really good.
I see a Blue Origin question.
Oh, look at you.
Nicole, this is for you, but this could be for everyone. And I wanted to know in just a few sentences, what do you want your legacy to be?
Oh my gosh.
No pressure.
Ugh. Well, I'd love it to have something to do with making life better on the planet for our son. And for, for other kids, it might sound a little kumbaya, but that's why I wanted to go to space to begin with. Don't get me wrong, I do not, I mean, the adventure side of launching on a rocket and floating around and landing on a spaceship. I mean, think about the space shuttle, that glider, that chirp on the runway, there's something really amazing about all that. But the thing that really made me want to go to space was as I discovered things that are like on the top part of the Blue Origin website, the For the Benefit of Earth thing. When I discovered that, oh my gosh, everything we really are doing on the space station is ultimately about improving life on Earth. And the way we work with the people there, the science that we're doing, the engineering that's going on, it's all coming back to Earth in such a positive way. And I felt like that was a good reason to strap into a rocket with 7 million pounds of exploding rocket stuff underneath you, because there was purpose, right? And so I hope that somehow, that my legacy would be tied to that purpose in some way. Yeah. I think all of you should answer that. Yeah.
I just like to find things like this and be able to share them. And these people have the visions, and then they give me the ability to help share it and put it out to the world so you guys can enjoy it. And so my legacy is hopefully that things like this will carry on and generations will see them, and I don't have to be around. They can just enjoy them for centuries.
It would be basically the same to pass on the love of art so that it continues and to do good. That would be share the message so that other generations continue to do the work that we do.
I think there's been two really beautiful themes that have come out, but the great question from the kids about, what's more magical, the Earth or space? And I think, they're both magical. And I think that this is a platform, Space for Art is a platform for people to accelerate their creativity. So basically, you could be in outer space, and as long as you have that infinite creativity, that infinite magic, it also becomes a beautiful place. And if all these kids can work together, I think that's what art is about. Work together, solve problems, and just remember there's infinite creativity and infinite solutions.
Yeah, I will say I have a huge amount of hope for the future. And it's funny because I feel like I've been growing up or, becoming an adult in a time where it's like easy to get scared about reality. And I had the strange fortune of spending a lot of time with people in really difficult situations and seeing them rise to the challenge in really beautiful ways, really powerful and profound ways, and bring so much joy and hope and spirit and laughter and enjoyment of life into some of the darkest corners you can find yourself in. And I got so much out of that I'll never forget to maintain that sense of joy in life. And so legacy wise for me, it's not about me. It's about witnessing that, and then drawing hope from that, and then just being that, so that because you guys, humanity is incredible. We are such a beautiful species. So much love, so much capacity, so much generosity, and it's really easy to sort of lose sight of that if you start looking down the wrong channels. But for me, just to keep that on the front burner, and that's the world for me.
I think just capturing and inspiring through the format of film to show people and how amazing these humans are in healing the world. I think that is a legacy.
Thank you to all of our amazing panelists and artists and everybody at Blue Origin and Club for the Future for being here. And that's it for me, guys.
Thank you, everybody.
Have a great rest of your day.
Thank you. Thanks for showing up.